A little mini debate between me and my wife here.
He said going to McDonald's would be a sin for him.
Well, I do it all happy and excited to take my kids to McDonald's and have no concern for being unhealthy.
I think it's actually wrong.
If we can bring back dinosaurs, I'd have no problem with that. Hey y'all, welcome to Water Break. It's good to be with you, Gabe and Annie here.
Hi guys.
If you guys missed our show last week, what's wrong with you? We actually interviewed Joel Salatin. He's the owner of Polyface Farming. He's been pretty well known kind of in our circles and actually broader than our circles. He's been in a number of documentaries and so forth. Well, we had him on the show last week. It was a great show. We also had some areas where we disagreed a little bit and had some good back and forth. So this show is kind of a standalone show, but you can also go back for more context and listen to that show. Go to our YouTube channel and check it out and everything. And
listen to that one first,
I enjoyed it very much. A couple things before we get into Annie. Annie's going to start off with some of her thoughts on that show. Some very practical thoughts. But I do want to highlight that Joel's comments on stewardship were fantastic. Again, go back and listen to the show on that. His comments on how to treat your animals. I really like when he's talking about like the chicken of the chickenness, the chickenness of the chicken.
The chickenness of the chicken.
And at one point he said the Gabeness of Gabe and the Anniness of Annie and everything. And just looking at, basically what he's getting at there is to tell us of what God created animals for, what God created Gabe and Annie for. And his comments on that were really good. And we need a lot more discussion around stewardship and just kind of the tell us of God's creation and what it means to be a good steward of that. Proverbs, he referenced this, but I'm gonna specifically quote it here. Proverbs 12:10 says, "A righteous man regards the animal of his life, the life of his animal, and that needs to be regarded all the way from how you raise it to its death.
Yeah.
You don't treat your animals horribly, and you don't even kill them in an inhumane way or animal way.
I think you can say people still say inhumane way.
And so how you treat your animals, and even if they're in the food production process in a big way, you need to treat your animals well. So those are some things I just wanted to compliment him on. I wanted to also kind of highlight that show and steer you guys to it and go check it out. But I'm going to hand it over to Annie because there's a bunch of practical things that came up in the conversation that we thought was really good, worth discussion and further discussion.
Well, okay. Yeah, guys, if you didn't listen to it or you're not familiar with Joel, although I think I got more feedback from this show on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever, than I've gotten on any show, I think. And a lot of you were like, "Oh, I love Joel." Like, you know who he is. Like, you've read his stuff, you watched his documentary, whatever. Like, you guys seemed fairly familiar and very excited that we were talking to him, and it all sounded very favorable, which is really cool. I only know so much about him, and I kind of want to go read more.
You saw the Canon Plus documentary.
I did watch it. That's about it, guys. I should know more, really. I need to dive in and read more of his work, really, to get a better handle on it. But I'm just going to kind of respond. All that said, we did just like an hour-long interview, and I would say for me, and I think for a lot of you too, it was by far the most thought-provoking really, interview that we've done so far. And my brain was just going crazy as he was talking, thinking about all these different things. And naturally, Gabe's was too, but it's really funny because we put our notes in, and like my notes are very like practical, like these are the issues, or how do we, how can we do this? It's very hands-on, very practical. And his notes are very like theological, and he tends to disagree more with Joel than I do. Anyways, I want to talk about the practical stuff that came into my mind while he was talking and while we were talking to him.
And we will get to, by the end of the show, the places
Gabe's
where
stuff.
we disagree. Where we disagree.
Well, you disagree.
Yeah,
you disagree. Okay. At a certain point in the interview, somewhere in the middle, I asked Joel, what are three, I think I said three, or I just said what are some, and he gave three, like just like practical tips for people, because, he has all this to say about, like you need to care about the quality of your food. You need to, we need to be treating our animals better. This is what happens in a feedlot. This is what glyphosate does to your health. This is, and it's like you listen to it and you're like, okay, that's compelling, But it's just like, then what do you do? What do you do if you're a family of 7 and you live in a city and you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of, like, what do you, where do you start? And what can people who are not farmers, do? And he was like, great. And he gave 3 really basic, and I thought really good. He called it like ingredients on a recipe list for this. And the first one was get in the kitchen, if you guys remember. Like start making your own food, which that seems right. I mean, we talk about that all the time. Like it doesn't take a Joel Salatin to know, like, yeah, you do need to be making, most of your food, you should be making it for a billion different reasons. The second one was do one thing. And he was like, anything, like get a composter, grow some herbs in a little basket in your kitchen, get a few chickens, start making sourdough, just one thing. And I think he said it like that connects you more to nature and, God's world. And I thought, okay, that's really good, And then the third one was, he said it in a different way, but it was basically start paying more attention to where your food comes from. Like just start paying more attention. And as he went into it, it was kind of like you can go to the farmer's market. You can Google who is selling beef or chicken or whatever in your area. Like start getting more in touch with where your food comes from and where you could source it from a good place. You know what I mean? And I thought, okay, that's really good too. And so I guess the thing that I was thinking when he was saying all that was like, okay, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, those are all things that we've, to some degree, talked about ourselves. But this is the issue. I don't think most of y'all listening or most of anybody listening would be like, no. Like, I don't think you should make your own food. Or like, no, I don't think you should go to a farmer's market. You know what I mean? I think most people would agree with this stuff, but it's not happening. A lot of times it's not happening. And when I think about, okay, but why is that? What's the problem? Because I don't think it's an information issue. I don't think it's a principally disagreed upon thing. It really, to me, seems to come down to mom. And I always come down hard on moms. I don't know. I can't help it. Like, I don't know if that's because I am a mom, but I just see mom being so central to the family, the family's health, the culture of the home. She just is. I guess she is, that's how God designed it. And, dad can be a driving force behind some of this stuff. He can fund a lot of this stuff, but he's at work all day normally. I mean, even if he's working from home, he's working, like he's got to make the money. And so a lot of this does fall on mom. It's just in her sphere. Would you agree with that? Like, I mean, a lot of it just does. So I'm not trying to be like extra hard on moms, but I just feel like this comes down to mom. And ultimately, you guys, and this is what I see over and over again with the women that I work with, the women that I talk to, just the women in my circles, all of it, is that moms are either too busy to do any of this stuff. They're just too busy. They're too busy to do it. They're too busy to even entertain the idea of it. Like getting are you kidding me? Don't even say that to me. Like I'm never home. I'm too busy. It's soccer. It's this, it's that, it's that. I'm too busy. And or they're too sick and tired. So that's where my mind goes, is that all of these suggestions are really good. I don't think most of us would ever say, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. That's a really bad idea. But I think moms, generally speaking, are not in a place because of choices that are being made, the way we've taken care of our health or not taking care of our health. We're not in a position to even fathom doing this stuff. And this is basic stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not saying everybody needs to become a full-time homesteader, or I mean, you can if you want, that's great. But like even doing some of these basic things like cooking your own food in your kitchen, using mostly whole food ingredients, doing one thing, growing one plant, starting sourdough, anything, small like that, even just being able to consider, hey, I don't want to buy my ground beef from Walmart anymore because I know this is really low quality feedlot beef, which doesn't make it bad or wrong, which is, I think, what this guy's going to talk about later. But we can all probably admit, hey, let's try to get something better quality. Maybe try to source from someone who treats their cows a little better. That just takes energy and time, and so many of us just don't have it. So I just want to talk about that a little bit because I think that's the biggest problem. I think that's the biggest problem more than anything. I think the ignorance thing, which Joel talked about also, is just like you're responsible to some degree based off of what you know. I think that's part of it, but I think that most of us, because we do acknowledge that these things are good things, if we had more time and we rearranged our priorities and we weren't so sick and brain fogged and tired all the time, we would do the research. Okay, women love to do the research. Okay, well, like if you're in a good place and you care about something, the rabbit holes we can go down is almost unbelievable. So I think the ignorance thing is a thing. A lot of us just don't know, but we would know if we were in a better place and we were prioritizing this stuff. So just like for a little bit here, I just want to talk about the business side of things. What I'm talking about is moms who are doing too much, working outside the home too much, saying yes to too many things and to too many people, and as a result, they are unable to take care of A, their own health, and you see this all the time, and B, by extension, their family's health. And this is just a really big deal. And I know I've talked about it so many times, but and Joel even talked about it at the end there, where he was just like, we are all trying to be like the world way too much. We have lost the home. I think he said we're not home centric anymore. Like right now, everything that's important, everything that matters, everything we care about is happening outside. And you just sort of go home like to take a shower or to grab some food so that you can leave again. Like it's a pit stop as opposed to like where the party's at. And he's 100% right about that. And I know there's exceptions, but it's a huge problem. And I know I want to note that there's two different kinds of busy. There's the moms who are never home. That would be my tendency. My tendency is to be out and gone too much. And it's hard because it's always doing something good. Like I'm at the orthodontist, or I'm off training a client, or I'm taking a kid to this, or taking a kid, whatever. But it's choices that we're making that can cause me to not be home enough to ever make sourdough, ever. Not even to be able to consider like, what's for dinner tonight? What's for dinner tomorrow? Like all these things take time and mental and emotional bandwidth. And if you're too busy, you're not going to be able to do it, right? And there's another kind of busy. There's the women who are home all the time, but they've had 6 babies in a row, a year and a half apart, and they have another kind of problem, right? Just because you're home doesn't mean that you're necessarily home in a way that's going to allow you to do certain things that are really, really important, like cook for your family, for example. So I just think the busyness, we have to address it. There is something about the modern American lifestyle. I don't know who started it. I don't know if I need to blame feminism. I don't know. I do blame feminism for a lot of things, but everybody, I feel like myself included, we all need to assess our life. And one way or another, if we are so busy, be it with stuff outside or situations inside, that we cannot just do the basics. Again, I'm not saying if you don't make your own sourdough and you don't make soap from scratch, then you're doing it wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I don't make sourdough right now. I buy it from someone in town who does. I think that's perfectly fine too. So I'm not saying you have to go crazy with this, but if you're in a place where you guys are in the McDonald's drive-through line 3 nights a week because of how busy you are, and Joel made that point too. I really think you need to reconsider what you're doing, your priorities. Exactly, because your health is everything. And food, like we talked about at the beginning of our last show, is the number one input in terms of long-term health by a long shot, simply because you eat 3 times a day. Right? It's not like some random like thing that you might get a small dose here and there. It's constant. It's every day. It really does build up over time. And I don't think any of us really have our finger on the pulse accurately of how impactful and important food is for our health. And I'm not just talking about like diabetes, although that's really important. You don't want it, but I'm talking about energy, mood, how you're sleeping at night. I mean, all of it, right? Yeah. All of it. And yeah, so that needs to be a number one priority for us moms. And so if we're not in a place because we're just saying yes to too many things, we've allowed our life to just get so stinking crazy and it is so easy to get there, then you need to reevaluate, sit down with your husband and just be like, what do we need to change? What do we need to slash? And I think a couple things, ultimately you need to have 2 things, I think. And I make very little exception on these 2 things because I think everybody's life can look different. Everybody can be in a different season of life, but I think you need to have the time and the energy to have some sort of exercise routine, moms, because as soon as your health breaks down, there goes your family. All right. And so you have to prioritize taking care of your health in some capacity on a regular basis. So you need time and energy for that. If you're saying you're too busy, if your life does not allow for that, you need to make changes. And secondly, you need to have the time and the energy to meal plan, to shop, to meal prep, and to make meals for your family that are, for the most part, nutrient dense and whole food based. Okay. And for some of you, you might be like, hey, I'm doing pretty well there. I might be able to improve a little bit. For some of you, that is like, wow, I'm not anywhere close to that. We are a Panda Express family. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that might be a huge jump for you, but you got to get there. And those are the 2 non-negotiables for me, at least. I think, again, there's room for, everybody's a little bit different.
And always start simple, start with one night.
That's what Joel said.
And then the best night I would say is like Saturday night before church, like the next day. Get people excited. We call it Sabbath dinner. So start there.
And then eventually it's 2 nights. And then eventually it's 3 nights. And you know what? I mean, that takes time. Meal planning takes time, especially if you have a bunch of little kids, especially if you're not good at it. It's a skill. So if this is new to you, you're just like, I have to get on Pinterest every single time. It's a skill that gets better. You might need to hire a babysitter and go to a coffee shop. You might have to do that.
Plan,
Yeah,
something like that.
you might have to. Like, you really might have to. It gets better with time. And to Joel's point, he was like, there's never been a time where it's easier because, he was like the crock pot, the Instapot. And he's right, you guys. Like, it is not actually that hard once you get into once you get into the habit of it. Okay. So really, this is just more of a conversation about priorities, changing habits, saying no to things. Okay.
Hey, all. If you care about raising your kids to love Jesus and staying strong in today's world, join us at the Fight, Laugh, Feast Conference, October 16th through the 18th at Rocketown in Nashville. This year's theme is School Wars, not Star Wars, School Wars, all about equipping Christian families to disciple their kids and rebuild Christendom. There's teaching, fellowship, jumpy castles for the kids, fun for the whole family. Annie and I, hopefully our kids too, will be there and would love to see you there. Register now at fightlaughfeast.com. Hope to see you in Nashville.
I've said this in many shows also, though, but if the issue is mom is working and making money, dads, please work really hard to take the financial pressure off of her, because and again, it depends on the family, but if you have a situation where mom is feeling all this pressure to make money and everybody's health is crumbling, probably including hers, and everybody's eating chicken nuggets every night because she's exhausted and doesn't have time to do any of these things, that's on you, And I know situations can be hard, and I know the economy's bad, so I don't want to sound insensitive, but ultimately, when you put that pressure on her, you are actually not allowing her to do the job that she is supposed to do, the job that she's called to do, because she's sharing your burden. And I just think, dads, be really aware of that and be as encouraging as you can, and in alleviating that pressure, whatever that might look like for you guys in that situation. And you also need to help her say no. Okay, women are terrible. We're terrible about saying no. I don't know what our problem is, but it's just like, especially if you live in a community where you know everybody, you like everybody, it's just like, oh, what's one more client? Okay, what's one more, volunteering one more class? What's saying yes to one more field trip? She's got to say no. You've got to say no. Now, if you're killing it, your health is good, your family's health is good, you've got this meal thing dialed in, you're just one of those high energy, high output people, then great. I have no problem with that. There's some women, I swear, they just metabolize busyness for energy and they just thrive, and it's like, fine. But there's so many more of you, I think, who are saying yes to so many things, where ultimately you're saying yes to people here on the periphery, which is causing you to have to say no in some way to the people closest to you that you are most responsible for. So husbands, help them out. It's not one of our spiritual gifts, usually, saying no. It's really, really hard. And you don't need to do what everybody else is doing. I think living here in Moscow, the Logos school life is a really good example of this. It's a very, very high intensity, high octane, everybody wants to do everything. A lot of kids are doing everything kind of life. And you could easily, and families do, get to a point where you don't see your kids, they don't see you, you don't sit down for a meal, like nothing. Like, you are just going. You literally sit in the bleachers every single night, one way or another. Usually, the husband's off with this kid's team and the wife's off with this kid's team. Everybody eats popcorn and hot dogs for dinner. Yeah. And I'm not saying,
nothing wrong with
that. That's going to happen sometime, but there is something wrong with that if that's every night.
Yeah.
I think there's something wrong with that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so you got to evaluate, like, are all your kids going to be 3-sport athletes? Maybe they shouldn't be. And I love sports. I'm not saying, what I mean? But it's just like, you have to, at a certain point, you have to weigh, are we missing like the big E's on the eye chart of like health here? Yeah. Because we're just getting caught up in this frenzied, like, well, everybody else is doing it. And like, ultimately it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, and you just got to say no sometimes. So, and then the last thing I want to say on the busyness thing, ladies, is that some women have a different threshold for how many different busyness, like how much stress and craziness they can handle than others. Mm-hmm. And that's never going to change. So don't compare yourself to other people. Also, if you are in good health, okay, hormones are good, blood sugar is good, all of these things are good, sleeping well, you're going to be able to handle a lot more than if you're in poor health. So if you're in poor health and you're wondering why, like, I just can't handle anything, like I can't focus my brain, I get so stressed, I just can't, that's not abnormal. Getting healthy is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to help you actually be able to handle more, which is one of the many reasons why you should be exercising regularly and taking care of your body so that you can.
And it helps you deal with that stress, whatever stress levels you
totally.
have.
Oh man, an unhealthy body can handle so little. It's already under so much stress, right? Yeah. And so you add in anything extra, you wonder why. You're just like, I don't know why. Why can't I do what this person over here is doing? Right. Health is a big part of that, okay? And then some of it's just individual people, and you just need to learn to know yourself. Have your friends help you out. Have your husband help you out. Some women do better doing less things. Some women need to be home more. They need to be in their own space. They need to be they need to introvert a little bit, or at least just be with their own people a little bit more for them to thrive. Other women are just like, I don't know. They have like 10 kids and like 5 jobs, and they're just out there just like killing it. Everybody's different. So note that, and don't fall for the terrible, I don't want to call it a sin. I don't know. Is it a sin? Comparison. Okay. Don't do it. You just have to figure out what is right for you.
You want to glance to the side.
And your family. Yes, the sidelong glance is the thief of all joy, truly. Okay, and the other thing that I said that is another of the biggest issues, and this can conflate with the busyness or be caused by the busyness often, is that there are moms out there that are just way too tired and sick to do any of these things, even these basic things that Joel's talking about. Because again, I doubt in their heart of hearts, they're like, no, I don't want to make home-cooked meals for my family. I think most women would be like, yeah, that's ideal. But so many of you are so tired and so sick, sick/tired, tired/sick, which came first, I don't know. They usually come together. Oftentimes, being too busy, saying yes to too much, doing too much can cause you to get tired and sick, right? Because you're not able to take care of yourself. The stress is too high. You're not exercising. You're not eating well. You get tired and sick. Ultimately, no matter how you get there, it's really bad. And I would say so many of you moms are quite sick and feeling quite poorly, whether you realize it or not. And that's really sad. We get gaslit even by doctors on the regular, when you're in there and you're like, well, I don't feel great. I'm tired all the time. My hair's falling out. I don't sleep very well. And so many doctors will be like, well, it's just part of getting older. That's terrible. And that's sad. And it doesn't need to be part of getting older. And you should ideally feel really good. All right. High energy, stable mood, sleeping well, strong, all a good immune system. Like all those things are ideal and within reach if you would take the steps that you need to take in order to take care of your health. And I just gotta say, you guys, so things like just exhaustion, lethargy, crashing in the afternoon, feeling tired all the time. I hear all of it, like all the time from moms, especially if they're over 30. Poor sleep, can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep. Brain fog is a huge one where it's just like, I have brain fog. I walk into a room, I forget why I'm in there. I can't find words. At the age of like 38, like I literally have women contact me all the time and they're like, I'm afraid I have dementia. Like I think something might be really wrong with me, but really it's just blood sugar, liver, not sleeping for years, no progesterone, things like that. It's probably not dementia, but still it's really bad. It's not normal. Depression, anxiety all the time. I see it all the time. Joint pain, constant injury, because we're not taking care of our bodies. Just walking around 50 to 100 pounds overweight. It doesn't feel good. Okay. It does not lend to you being able to take care of anyone else's health, when you feel that bad. Being snappy and irritable and crabby all the time. See, all these things are so common that we just sort of think of it as like, this is just how it is. This is tired mom syndrome. This is part of getting older, but it certainly does not need to be. And you are never going to be in a position to take good care of your family when you feel so bad. Like I cannot think of a scenario in which, and maybe you can, where a mom being in poor health and really not feeling good. Again, whether she realizes it or not, because if you feel bad for long enough, you do start to just be like, well, this is just how it is. It's like a frog being boiled in water slowly. But I can't think of a scenario where mom being really unhealthy does not drastically affect the family's dynamic and health in a very negative way. Like, I really can't think of a scenario. I mean, we're talking about her ability to just do practical things like make meals, drive kids around, read to her children, go on a hike, play with her kids. I mean, that even doesn't even touch like what kind of marriage you're going to have. And that's a big deal. You know what I mean? Like mom, she really is the glue that holds the whole domestic thing together. And it should be priority number one that she is taken care of and in good health, right? As best as we can control. Obviously, there's some things that happen that we're not in control of, but there's so many things that we can do that we're not doing. So I just think it's a really big deal. So we're talking here, we're talking good nutrition, and that might mean making some serious changes in the budget that you give your wife, the things that you say no to, so she has time to figure this out. Because again, it's a skill. Some girls know what to do, they just don't have the time. Some girls really don't know what to do. And that might take some research. That might take reading some books. That might take hiring a coach for a while. This might take some investment here. It might take a reverse diet. A lot of you are grossly undereating, and that's one of the reasons you feel so bad. You are nutrient deplete, and you have been for a really long time. I mean, all those things I just listed off, hair loss, brain fog, all that bone, loss of bone, 100% can just be from being undernourished for a really long time. What kind of mom are you going to be, you guys? You got brittle bones, no hair. You're all stressed out. You can't sleep. Like, you're a disaster. You can't even take care of yourself. How are you going to take care of other people? Like, how are you going to do it? I mean, it's just so sad. So it's also going to take regular exercise. I mean, you need to be regularly exercising. And please, you guys, stop waiting until mom's health is just absolutely imploded before you go find a coach. I'm really tired of it. I'm honestly really tired of it. I am listen, I will help anyone.
Yeah.
And the mom gig and having babies and all of it is hard on the body. My heart goes out to everybody. I will help anyone, no matter how bad and far gone or neglected. That is the right word. Self-neglect, neglect by your just neglect.
Yeah.
I will try to help you, but guys, it is so much better. And husbands, you are taking care of your wife a lot better if you help her out a lot sooner than what most of y'all are doing. Okay, when it comes down to either it's surgery or we'll talk to you, that's like way too late. All right, like you should have intervened a long time ago. And I just don't. We talked about this before. The maintenance thing, it just kills me. Like, I feel like maintenance for your car, for your boat, your gutters, like men love this stuff, that we are all about it. Like, oh my gosh, look, I just waxed my car. Or like, oh, don't do that. We need to do this special thing so the seats stay.
We change the oil.
Change the oil. I mean, they get on us for not, like how long has this oil light been on? How long has this oil light? You know what? The oil light on your wife has been on for like 15 years and you missed it, because in a human being, an oil light is like, I'm gaining weight and I don't know why. I don't feel good. I'm not sleeping. My hair is falling out. All those things. That's a big check engine oil, like big. Or is there a worse light than that? I don't know anything about cars.
Check engine oil.
Okay, check engine oil. Is there a worse light?
There's the general check engine light.
Like
and
your
then
car is about to blow up.
Yeah.
That light's been going on for a lot of you ladies for a long time and no one's picking up on it. And I just feel like, dads, you gotta get on it, okay? You will not be able to take care of your family if you don't take care of yourself. So this is going to take time, changing habits, saying no to things, reprioritizing, spending the money. The amount of times I hear from, usually it's the mom, and I don't know if it's coming from the husband or not. It's hard to know, but it's not in the budget. That's insane, because this should be priority number one, because once again, mom is ultimately the one who is going to be able to heavily impact and dictate the health of the rest of her family and the state of her home. Yeah. So taking care of her is it is not just morally right, which it is, but it is the most strategic thing that you can do in order to have a good life. I mean, like, it really is. So I guess that's that's mostly it for me.
Hey y'all, just a quick break to tell you about a company we love, Dusty Rose Tallow. This is a small Christian family-run business started by our friends Dustin and Katie Van Vliet. They've got 3 little ones running around, and Katie's actually a nutritional therapy practitioner, so she knows her stuff.
You know, we're always talking about how what you put in your body matters, but what you put on your body is just as important. And that's why Dustin and Katie started making their own skincare products using grass-fed tallow and real traditionally infused oils. No hormone disruptors or weird chemicals, which I love.
They've got everything from whipped tallow creams to sun balm sticks and even candles, as you see here on our table here. Every product is made with care, so you can focus on the good works God's called you to without worrying about what you're putting on your skin.
You can check them out at dustyrosetallow.com or follow them on Instagram at dustyrosetallow. We think you'll love them as much as we do.
So I'm going to, the side that I want to hit on is kind of more like biblical principles around this conversation. There's probably, and honestly, I'm having this conversation with some of Joel's thoughts in mind. He's not here to defend himself, and probably actually, if we talk through some of these details, I bet me and Joel would actually agree far more on the details than maybe how it might come off here. So I would say kind of the big areas where me and Joel disagreed were kind of on how to think about chemicals. And I don't disagree. Again, I don't disagree with like some of the things he said at all. I think chemicals are a real problem. I think big pharma, big tech, big health industry, big ag, all that, I think they're doing some very bad things with chemicals. But I would say I'm not scared of chemicals. And I don't think Joel is either, but again, I think more it's about how it's being addressed, how it's being talked about in the biblical principles that we should be driving to and towards. The other area where we probably had more of a bigger disagreement was on how we think about food consumption as it relates to the supply chain, right? So Joel basically said, and again, go back and listen to the show. He basically said it would have been a sin for Jesus to feed the 5,000 McDonald's.
Oh yeah, that's
and a big statement. Love the big statement. I think it's such a
statement.
And the discussion there, I think, is so good to be had. But
we didn't really have it much.
Yeah, we didn't really get into it.
He said that, and you were like, "It would not be a sin."
Yeah, I was like, "Not be a sin."
It's McDonald's, and then his mic went out, and then we just moved on.
Yeah, we kept going, and I didn't want to get. The conversation was about Joel. We wanted to hear what he had to say, so it wasn't really so much a disagreement kind of conversation we were trying to get at. But I think how we think about our supply chain, our food supply chain, basically, all the way, and this food supply chain ends up on your table. If you don't end up at McDonald's, it's going to end up on your table. So you have to think through this kind of thing. Is very important. And then I'd say the last area where, again, I don't know if Joel would totally push back in all these details, but he really, the production of cheap food versus quality food, there was definitely some, or as, kind of reading between the lines a little bit, because we didn't really debate it much. Cheap food versus quality is Joel leans far more towards quality food. Now, I think there's something that, goodness and beauty, truth, goodness and beauty. There's something good and beautiful about quality food. I'm not rejecting, but I'm not against cheap food because, again, and I would love to have this conversation deeper with Joel, but again, because I think there's some biblical principles there that we need to be basing everything off of, which Joel is total Christian, and he does base everything off the Bible.
Yeah.
So I think the conversation there would be really good. But here's kind of the big idea here, is that God created man. He created man, male and female, and he created Adam. He gave Adam the particular order to take dominion, and the wife to be his helper in taking dominion. And then God gave all the animals to Adam. So all the animals were given to Adam to take dominion. And then we had the fall. So before the fall, no animals died. Animals were not used for food consumption. None of that. Then we had the fall.
Right.
And then God killed the first animal to make clothing for Adam and Eve. And then God gave the orders later on. We see more orders in Leviticus and Deuteronomy on how to consume food, what food you can consume. The Israelites had certain restrictions on food. They weren't allowed to eat pigs, stuff like that.
They had a lot of restrictions.
Yeah, they had a lot of restrictions on food back then. Yeah. And all those restrictions were removed when Christ died and rose again. So the restrictions there were daily reminders that Jesus was the ultimate goal, that Jesus, his death and resurrection on the cross is what was going to make everything right. And that it was a daily reminder that there's unclean animals and clean animals. And that there's unclean people and clean people. That there's people who make sacrifices for their sin to God and people who don't make sacrifices for sin to God. And then ultimately that all was reconciled in Christ. And so that's why we don't have food laws anymore like what we did before.
Okay.
At Peter's dream in Acts where he dreams about the pigs and all that stuff.
The sheep.
So,
yeah.
So, with that said, there's maybe a couple, I won't even say these are categories, but they're like a couple things that you need to be thinking through. And maybe category is maybe the best term to be using here, but there's liberty, what liberty you have in Christ.
Yeah.
There's preference. I like chicken. I like steak,
Yeah.
There's conscience, and conscience is, usually used in the Bible for kind of like what bothers you or what bothers your neighbor. That's usually how a conscience is, like, my conscience bothers me. Or my conscience, or what I'm doing is bothering my neighbor's conscience.
But that's differentiated from, like, objective sin.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, that's actually a really good way to put it. And then lastly, objective sin is the last kind of category.
Right,
so,
10 Commandments.
Yeah, 10 Commandments, murder, all that
others,
stuff.
But yeah.
Yeah, so liberty. So think of liberty, preference, conscience, and actual sin in all this. So when kind of the big rub for me was how we think. So Joel wanted to hang a lot of weight on the supply chain.
Okay, when you say the supply chain, be specific.
Like Tyson Food. They give us chickens in the store.
Right. So like Tyson and his point was like they don't treat their chickens well. They're not living in any kind of a natural environment. They're all crammed in tight. They're full of high stress
environment.
Yeah, and all this stuff. And he said a lot of even the sicknesses that these chickens get are like man-made because of the way they're being raised.
It's unclean environment.
Full of antibiotics, and then they have to fill them with antibiotics because of the sicknesses. I mean,
salt water.
I doubt he's wrong. And it was valid points. Yeah, right. And so he was like, don't buy those chickens.
Yes.
Because they are A, not very good for your health in terms of food grade, and B, because you're supporting Tyson and all the manufacturing.
Animals, basically, how huge
you're supporting a very cruel raising and butchering whole situation of them. Right? That's what he said.
Good summary, baby.
Yeah.
And I would say there, first of all,
I thought it was really compelling.
I'm happy to give him his argument.
Yeah.
But also, second of all, in this is God gave animals to men to take dominion over. So how we take dominion is not going to look the same way as how we treat, let's say, another human who's made in the image of God and everything. So let me give you an example of this that I'm thinking of here. There were fatted cows in Scripture, and the fatted calf was the most sought after food. You know, God used that as a number of times and as a description of good food in Scriptures. And so, well, how do you fatten a calf? I mean, you aren't letting them out there roam in the field. You probably, got them in stalls or something. You're giving them food daily. I have no problem with foie gras from ducks, fattening up ducks. God told Israel, eat the fatted calf, right?
Well, hopefully you'd have a problem with it if the process of fattening them was cruel. So again, it's kind of like you just have to know stuff, right?
I agree that you can be cruel in how you raise animals in the food supply chain. That can be cruel. It can be done in a bad way. It can be done in a cruel way. But as a consumer, and this is where we'll get into the Bible here in a minute, but as a consumer, you don't need to have a conscience. Your conscience doesn't need to be pricked because of how your meat was raised. Now, there might be sin over the owner of the food supply chain, Tyson Foods or whatever. He might be in sin, but you eating that food, you're not in sin. And in the same way, if you started reasoning this way, oh, I know Bob from Tyson, he kills his chickens in an inhumane way, and so therefore it'd be a sin for me to eat that food because I know how it was treated over here.
Right.
If you start reasoning that way, well, then it's like, you can't buy your shoes at Nike because they were farmed out to China as slave labor.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. That's my biggest thing. It's just like...
As you start getting stuck...
If you're being really consistent, you can't buy anything or eat anything, almost. Not totally. And some of it just comes down to what your personal passion is, what you happen to know more about.
That's right.
Because what if your, child labor was your passion? Yeah. You might not shop at Nike because you know so much about it, and it really, really bothers you, as it should bother everyone. So some of it has to be that.
And so I have no problem. Now, if you do your research into, let's say, Nike, and there really is child slave labor behind their shoes, which I wouldn't be.
There probably is.
There probably is, right?
There probably is.
And then you say, like, okay, I'm just going to put my money in a different place. I'm going to try to find some Christian shoe company. I think that's great. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the way the Bible talks about it is you aren't responsible basically for other people's sin.
Yeah, well, that's true.
That's basically the...
But how do you... that is true. You're not responsible for other people's... Children are not responsible for the sin of their fathers. The Bible's actually very clear about that, and that's really a relief, honestly, you guys, if you think about that in other areas of life. You're not responsible for anybody else's sin. However, if you saw a store and it had Black Lives Matter or trans stuff pasted all over it, that's what it represented. They were going well out of the way to say that. Wouldn't you say, I vote with my dollars, I don't want to support that, I'm going to go to this other store?
But it would not be a sin if you did buy a T-shirt in there.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the thing. I think you're talking about sin.
I do this all the time.
Yeah,
we have a show where we're like, on Cross Politic, we tell people, go shop here, get your body armor here because the CEO is Christian.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, isn't the answer here, and I'm sorry if I'm hijacking some of this, but isn't the answer just like, okay, the more you know, the better you can do. We can't know everything about everything. Food is probably not a bad place to start because, it's got huge implications for our health. And animals, we should be trying to support farmers and whatever that are treating animals well. I think I just don't know that many Christians that would disagree with that. So just like...
Those are all great ideas and great encouragements. But Joel giving McDonald's to the 5,000 a sin is the problem.
He didn't say it was a sin. He just said he didn't think Jesus would do it. And he said going to McDonald's would be a sin for him because of what he knows.
Yes.
But he said, but there's a lot of wiggle room for ignorance. And I do understand that, but I think that maybe it's just his conscience.
Ignorance is a sin.
His conscience wouldn't allow him
ignorance
because of what he knows and what his passion is and how much knowledge he has. Yeah. So I understand that. But the point I was making before isn't the biggest takeaway here for Christians. It's like, hey, keep continuing to, because you can't, and I have to tell this to women all the time when their pantry is full of processed food and that's all they eat. Yep. And then I'm like, well, this is where you want to be over here, which is like mostly unprocessed. And it's like, okay, you're not going to do that overnight, right? You just slowly start replacing one thing at a time. Like one thing at a time, you make a swap. So now we buy We don't buy coffee from Starbucks. We buy from Squirrely Joe's, a faith-based coffee.
Yeah.
And it's delicious, by the way, Squirrely Joe's. And like, you're always talking about, we want a Christian bank. We want to have and there's more and more Christians starting their own, or conservatives starting their own companies.
Yes.
And any chance you can, you move over to that, right? And then you can feel a little bit better about it. So it's just kind of like, make the changes that you can. That's what I'm saying.
The categorical.
It's not sin.
It's not sin.
Yeah.
So Joel, to go eat at McDonald's, the Bible would say that's not sin. Now, McDonald's, if they're offering their food up to idols, this is where we're going with scriptures.
Yeah.
And if McDonald's is offering their food up to idols, and Joel goes and grabs a takeout burger and goes home and eats it, he's not in sin. Now, offering food up to idols is sin.
Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
But to go participate, to go eat it. Now, where the Bible draws the distinction, I'm thinking of, you guys can read 1 Corinthians 10, 1 Corinthians 8, Romans 14. That's where these principles are, coming out of. But in 1 Corinthians 10, it's particularly talking about food offered up to idols. And it says, if your brother sees you and his conscience is bothered, then don't eat the food in front of him. In fact, it says you can eat the food. It's not. This isn't about your conscience. This is about your neighbor's conscience.
Yeah.
Let's say he grew up in that temple, and then he became a Christian, and then he sees you go by it, and it brings up all this memory or all this desire.
It's triggering.
It's triggering.
It's triggering.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it's getting at. But it's talking, the guy there, the people who have the conscience problem are generally called the weaker brothers in scriptures.
I know, but Joel did respond to that. And this is a response I've had sometimes to this point, is that in that case, it was just like a religious conviction thing. In the case of McDonald's, we're just using McDonald's as an example, or Tyson Chicken, whatever. It's not just a religious thing. Yeah. It's the fact that the chicken itself is full of this, that, antibiotics, and the chicken was not treated well. So I do think there is a little bit of a difference here. And I think one of the things that makes it so hard is that in Bible times, and I don't want to be one of those people who's like, nothing really, it doesn't, but in Bible times, there was no, and he references Red 40, high fructose corn syrup. We weren't giving antibiotics to these animals. We weren't, using glyphosate. Like, none of that stuff was happening. Yeah. So it was a lot easier to just be like, oh, the earth is the Lord's and all, like everything is fine, because food was all in its pretty raw, basic, unadulterated form. So we're having to deal with stuff now and grapple with things as Christians that just wasn't a thing then. And I just want to,
the Bible addresses,
I just want to point that out. It does. I'm not saying it, but I'm just saying, I think that's a valid point, and it's something we all have to grapple with. Yeah. I think conscience is part of it, and I appreciate that Joel at least said it would be a sin for me. Yeah. He wasn't saying it was a sin for everybody else. Yeah. And I understand what he's saying.
The biblical principles are we are not responsible for other people's sin. And Paul, in that same chapter in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, he references Psalm 24. We talked about this before on the show, where it says the earth is the Lord's in all its fullness.
I know, but I hate it when you reference that. Okay,
but does
that mean eat arsenic? I mean, there's tons of things that is the Lord's that if we ingest, it's really bad for our health.
That's the telos conversation.
Well, that's the whole point.
God designed and built everything for a reason, and we got to figure out what that reason is. With chemicals or whatever. What's this design purpose here for this chemical? It's not for food. It's for this.
I think that's the whole point. Is that there's tons of things in this earth that shouldn't be in food or shouldn't be called food.
Sure, but then there's a bunch of chemicals that should be in food and isn't food. Maybe. Our food is full of chemicals. There's acid in apples.
We need to. We're talking about like man-made chemicals that are detrimental to people's health,
this goes back to
messing up your gut lining and stuff.
Yeah, this goes back to taking dominion, and that all chemicals that are man-made should have a purpose and design. Should be well defined, but it's a good thing that man invents. It's a good thing. We have no problem with gasoline. Well, that was made.
Well,
but we know the telos and we know the direction.
Yeah.
Well defined.
The telos and
penicillin.
Is it a net negative for our health that's what you have. That's a conversation. You can't talk about anything floating in the air.
What I'm talking about is principle. And we can get into the nitty gritty of, glycine, if it comes into our food, maybe glyphosate, excuse me. If it comes into our food, well, maybe it shouldn't be in our food. That might be a downgrade or a bad problem for us, whatever. We're eating poison, whatever we want to call it. But the point is, I'm not scared of chemicals, and we shouldn't be. And we should be creative human beings. We should be able to create chemicals for purposes. And some of those chemicals are already in our food or should wind up in our food. I don't have a problem with that conversation. Now, I do have a problem. I do think our food supply and our food that we're eating as it's been modified and so forth, I do think there's a lot of problems with that. At least, we've seen the data. We've talked about this on our show. In 1950s, people were eating 3,000 calories a day, and they aren't fat. So there's definitely some, I think, objective things that we can see then versus now that, objective, fatness, or, we talked about
objective fatness.
Pulling blood samples. So
we
good,
have it.
so good is because it makes things objective about your health. Oh, look, you're low on vitamin D. Oh, look,
So you're just saying that,
I'm saying in principle.
Principally, you're not against us being innovative, inventing things that could include.
We're called to.
That could be chemicals. It could be whatever. But whereas maybe Joel would just be like, all chemicals are bad. Period. I don't know if he says that though.
I don't think he's arguing that.
We didn't talk about any of these things for that long.
He did talk about mixing seed. He doesn't
GMO stuff. Yeah,
he doesn't think that's good.
Principled guy in his opinion, and I don't honestly know enough to argue.
But the principle, that's why I don't know enough about all the details, and I'm willing to have my mind changed. But the principle is man's to take dominion, man's to wield the. God wanted to discover when he put Adam and Eve in the garden. He said, "Hey, look out at that river. There's gold down this river. There's onyx down this river. There's all this."
He's but he answered that. He referenced Jurassic Park.
You're not letting me finish my thoughts very well.
Remember he referenced Jurassic Park, that really famous line where you've been working so hard at figuring out if you can, you didn't stop and think if you should.
If we could bring back dinosaurs, I'd have no problem with that.
Oh my gosh, huge can of worms. I hope you guys are enjoying the show.
You get to see me.
Jeff Goldblum says we should not have brought back the dinosaurs, and I'm pretty sure Joel Salatin agrees with him. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting you. You can finish.
Oh
my gosh, we've been talking for a long time.
So the whole mixed seed thing is, if I could make so let's put it this way: if we had a child and they're born with a malformed leg, that's how they're born. I have no problem with fixing that leg. In the same way, if there's something going on in the universe where this seed just does not work that well, and I can figure out how to modify it to where it grows better, I think we're made to make. So God talks about us taking us from glory to another glory. Okay, that's also in Corinthians. And I think if we can imitate God in that way and make something that was damaged here on earth, because the world is also crippled from the fall of man. So Adam's sin didn't only just affect humans, it affected everybody, affected the whole world, animals, everything. Mm-hmm. And so if we can actually make something better that's maybe not as good, it's kind of broken here on earth, and we can make it better, I'm all for that. Now, of course, we can get in all the, discussions about this seed versus that seed.
I don't know enough about GMOs to really have an opinion. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Is what we want to talk about here. We want to make sure we're grounded in the Bible so we can actually better sort through the telos of everything that we're actually talking about, the purpose and goal of everything we're talking about. We probably need to wrap up here.
Man, so we're full of opinions and very little particular knowledge about a lot of this stuff. I want to bring someone on about glyphosate.
Yeah, I do. I 100%.
I want to see the studies.
There's a lot of charges on that.
I want to see the studies.
So my point there. So I think there's all sorts of, in the detail kind of discussion to be had in this.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But I want to ground us back in the scriptures where we can learn the freedom of how to do these things.
I think it's the right.
I think they're actually,
we need to do that.
I don't think artificial insemination for humans is good, or what do they call it?
Like in vitro?
IVF, in vitro.
IVF, yeah.
I think that creates all sorts of abortions, basically.
There's obvious reasons for that one. I mean, most people.
But I have no problem doing that for cows.
Well, he was adamantly against it.
Yeah.
He was like, you end up with a faultier herd, like a less lower quality herd. I mean, he's so interesting.
But the question is,
so interesting.
Or
maybe it does, but for me, it's always, does the negative outweigh the positive? You know what I mean? Like, okay, the quality of the food will be a little lower, but there's so much more of it. Which one's better? Yeah. And
I think it's fun part of the discussion, but also the other thing is, well, then don't inbred your cows so deep. Right? Like, it's like you can fix that problem pretty easily. So,
well, what are some of your thoughts though here to wrap it up? I mean, all we've done is probably thoroughly confuse people and make them be like, oh no, can I even shop on Amazon? Yeah. Being consistent as a Christian should be a really big deal. It's very hard to do in this world. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where do we lead people?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I would go back to those 4 categories at the beginning. There's the liberty to do
I like your
as
categories.
you please, and in the Lord. It always says in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. There's the preference of what you want. I like steak over salmon or whatever. That's totally fine. And then there's the conscience of the situation, and the conscience of the situation is always referring to the weaker brother in Scripture. Go back and read, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and Romans chapter 14 on that. And then I'd say the last thing is, where's the sin? Define the sin. Where is the sin? You aren't responsible for someone else's sin in the production side of the food, and kind of live freely in the Lord.
But can I just say one thing though? Because with the conscience thing, because I think I know what point you're saying. You keep bringing up the weaker brother, but all of us have a conscience. Yeah. Hopefully, as a Christian, your conscience is really just code for the Holy Spirit to some degree, right? Yeah. Like cueing you, making you, I don't know, convincing you or making you feel one way or another about something when maybe you don't have a Bible verse for it. Because I would say for me, knowing what I know about health and caring about my family, my conscience doesn't feel good about me taking my kids to McDonald's all the time, mostly because I just think it's really unhealthy food. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sit well with me. I don't feel like I'm taking really good care of my family. If they go every once in a while, from a health standpoint, I don't see it as a big deal, but we're not going to go a couple times a week. That does not sit well with me. Now, I wouldn't call it sin, but I still won't do it because I don't think it's me being a good mom or me taking good, what do you call that? That's not a weaker brother thing. I would say, that's just like me trying to be a good mom, right? That could be anyone in that scenario.
Yeah, that conscience is a strong opinion guiding your preferences.
Did you just make that up?
Yeah, it just came off. That
was really good.
So good. So that use of conscience is getting in a preference because, again, it wouldn't be sin for you to take your kids to McDonald's, but you have a conscience for whatever reason. There's a strong conscience, there's a strong opinion that really is just guiding that preference.
It feels more than preference, though. Preference is like, I prefer shrimp in my Caesar salad. I just like it, or I like the color blue. Conscience for me is like, I don't feel good about this. This doesn't feel right for me to do this. And I totally understand that maybe I can't come down and say it's a sin like the way Joel did, at least for himself, but I still don't think it's good. And I think it's more than preference. I mean, if someone sits down next to me and they're so unhealthy and they're eating fast food all the time, I'm like, this isn't good. You're not taking good care of your body. I don't think that's obedient to God. It's certainly not wise. Like, what do you call that?
So the way the scriptures would put it, let's just read the verse.
Sorry, guys, we're not done yet.
Well, we've got a couple more minutes here. So this is Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. He said, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful.
Yeah.
So I would say that's getting into preference. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. Let no one seek his own, but each one the well of the other, the well-being of the other. Eat whatever sold in the marketplace. Ask no questions for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord in all its fullness. If any of those who do not believe, invites you to dinner, so unbeliever invites you to dinner, and you desire to go, eat whatever is set before you, asking no question again for conscience sake.
This is not a health question. This is not a health situation. This is what I'm asking is this. We're talking about fast food that is objectively a net negative for your health. It's not healthy for a billion reasons. The kinds of oils that are in those fryers, the fact that they're reheated over and over again.
You can argue drinking wine's a net
what's
negative
possible? You absolutely, you absolutely can.
We've talked about this before. I deny that category.
Do you think? Okay, leave the wine part out of it. You deny that McDonald's is like you think it's a healthy meal, like nutritive, good, like a net positive. I'm not saying it's wrong here and there, but I mean like whatever you eat the most of is gonna show up in your blood work. It's gonna clog your arteries. It's gonna cause you to go, get diabetes earlier. Like you know what I mean. Like
the problem in eating food is always tied up into, how much. Are you if you eat ice cream every night, you're going to be eventually turn into a bad student.
Totally, the poison's in the dose of almost everything. Yeah. That's true. Almost everything.
But that's always the issue. So if I ate McDonald's every day, I would eventually become a bad steward of my body.
Exactly.
If I had McDonald's one time, I'd have no problem with that. And I think it's nutritional, and I think it feeds you. By nutritional, I'm not saying it's like the best.
It's calories.
Maximized.
It's calories. Yeah, it's calories. It'll make you full. Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
And there's a difference between, I'd say, eating McDonald's and then going to a nice French restaurant where food grade, all that stuff.
Yeah, but that full circle though, I think it's more than preference that I'm feeling when I say to myself, I do not want my kids to eat McDonald's 3 days a week. That is not good for their bodies. I think that's objectively true, and I think that's more than preference. I think you know what I mean.
Again, that is how much. I'd have no problem. I'd do it all happy and excited to take my kids to McDonald's and have no concern for being unhealthy. Now, for one time. Now, if I did 3 or 4 times a week, I'd start to have a huge concern about, is it being healthy?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
that right there.
But
is that
I'm making
just
the distinction.
preference, or is it actually your like? Could you actually say, I think that would be wrong? Because that's what I say. I think it's actually wrong.
Distinction on quantity, on how much, not if you do it. So if you go to McDonald's once, I have no problem, and I'm not even concerned about it being unhealthy. If you go to McDonald's 4 times in a week, then I'm all right. Okay, yeah, you're probably being unhealthy. And then this also gets into an issue like some people are allergic to milk or whatever, and if you drink a lot of milk, well, that's really unhealthy for you. You shouldn't do that. You aren't being a good steward of your body, whatever. So this comes down to who you are, quantity, how much you're doing it. Are you being a good steward? And just because you did it once, eat, drink, be merry, do it all to the Lord, and move on. If you're, so that, and that's where it's.
I do agree with
pushing
that.
to wisdom, wisdom. We want wisdom in the Lord, and so do we go to McDonald's once this week, or maybe it's unhealthy for someone to even do once a week, which would be, maybe once a month, or maybe twice a year you do it for fun. Take the kids. Hey kids, we eat at home. We're doing great healthy wise. Let's go to McDonald's, have some fun.
Yeah. Well, I agree with all that.
That's what I'm talking about.
The poison's in the dose, and it's different for people. But I feel like it's more than preference.
Yeah.
I feel like conscience there is not just about the weaker brother. Yeah. I feel like we all have a conscience, and depending on what we know, the way the Holy Spirit convicts us, everybody's a little different, and they could be more convicted on one thing than another thing, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Joel's clearly very convicted about this stuff, whereas someone else might be more convicted about something else, because they know more about it, or maybe it's personal history. I don't know.
I don't reject knowledge in this either, because there's a difference between ignorance in Scripture and knowledge in Scripture, and you have, and in a lot of instances, ignorance can actually even be a sin. I wouldn't say ignorance in this situation.
You could be purposely ignorant in a way that you really shouldn't be, like intentionally ignorant. Which there's that's the thing too.
More to bring into this conversation, but I mean, I think the big principles you want to. It's like when you read through Scripture, when you become a Christian, when you're trying to live under the Lordship of Christ, you want to nail down, really good certain principles that God gives us, and you want everything to be built off kind of those foundations, those nails that you've driven into the ground very steep.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to get at here. And then of course, like we've already been kind of debating back and forth here, it's like there's all these nuances that start to pop up.
There's a lot.
But you have to have your convictions and your principles nailed down first before you can even start discussing those. And
I like that you're doing that. I think we all need to do that. Yeah. We don't want to be guilt driven. The more you know, guys, the more you know, it might be good for us to educate ourselves a little bit more on this. And ultimately, you just make the changes that you can as time goes on.
Yeah.
So,
And you want to do what's best for your family, your kids, and you want your whole family to be on the same page and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You want your kids to love your standards, whether it's your health standards in your family or don't jump on the couch in your house kind of standards. You want your kids to love your standards and what you're doing. And I would say that's probably the biggest part of this, because if your kids aren't spiritually healthy, I don't care what your diet is. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like, get your family spiritually healthy. And then let's talk about the secondary issue of maybe eating healthier.
It should flow naturally from that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, you guys. I hope you really enjoyed this show. A little mini debate between me and my wife here.
Enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Fighting about conscience versus
very good discussion.
idle meat.
It needs to be pressed. You need to be pressed on
it
these
does.
things.
I think it's a tough one. So. It's a tough one.
Love you, baby, and hope you guys enjoyed a water break this week. Make sure you check out the Joel Salatin show. Obviously, a lot of that came out of this discussion, and I think this is something that needs to be far more in our minds as we talk through food, supply chains, all the way to the dinner.
Yeah, we all need to grapple with it, so it's good.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.